Imagine watching your family toast the man who stole your identity, your work, and your future. They thought I was broken. They thought I was silent. They were wrong. This is one of those revenge stories born from family betrayal, where justice doesn't whisper, it exposes everything. My family told me I should be grateful my ex-boyfriend was willing to fix my algorithm, oblivious to the fact that he was stealing my life's work right in front of them. They toasted to his genius as he prepared to ring the opening bell, never suspecting that I had planted a digital time bomb in the code that was about to expose his fraud to the entire world. My name is Eva Mitchell, and for the last 3 years, I have been a ghost in my own life. While the world celebrated the meteoric rise of a new tech visionary named Mark Sterling, I sat in a dimly lit apartment, watching my parents and my sister fawn over the man who had stripped me of my dignity, my intellectual property, and my voice. To the public, Mark was the prodigy who revolutionized high-frequency trading with a predictive AI called Apex. To my family, he was the son they always wanted, charismatic, wealthy, and successful. But to me, he was a thief who didn't know the difference between a variable and a constant, a man who had built a billion-dollar empire on a foundation of stolen code and gaslighting. I need to start from the beginning so you understand why what happened at the NASDAQ opening ceremony wasn't just revenge. It was a restoration of reality. Growing up, I was always the anomaly in the Mitchell household. My father, Robert, was a real estate agent who valued a firm handshake over a sharp mind, and my mother, Linda, was a socialite who believed that appearances were the only currency that mattered. Then there was my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was perfect in their eyes. She was bubbly, fashionable, and engaged to a junior partner at a law firm. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one who preferred the logic of C++ and Python to dinner parties. I spent my teenage years building servers in the basement, and my college years double majoring in computer science and mathematics. I met Mark 3 years ago at a tech mixer in San Francisco. I was cornered near the refreshments, trying to avoid making small talk, when he approached me. He was handsome, I'll give him that. He had that polished, practiced charm that makes you feel like the only person in the room. He told me he was an idea guy looking for a technical co-founder. I was naive. I was starved for connection and validation, and here was this confident man telling me that my ideas were brilliant. We started dating within a month. At first, it was wonderful. He listened to me ramble about neural networks and predictive modeling. I told him about a side project I had been working on for years, a proprietary algorithm I called Aletheia, named after the Greek goddess of truth. The code was designed to analyze micro-patterns in market volatility that traditional bots missed. It was my magnum opus, thousands of hours of my life crystallized into lines of elegant, efficient instructions. Mark was fascinated. He suggested we move in together so he could support my work. I thought it was romantic. I didn't realize it was the beginning of a hostile takeover. The dynamic shifted slowly. At first, he would just sit behind me while I coded, asking questions. Then he started suggesting that he handle the business side of things so I could focus on the tech. He registered the LLC, Sterling Technologies. I asked why my name wasn't on it. He smiled that dazzling smile and said, "Babe, Mitchell Sterling is a mouthful, and sterling just sounds like money, doesn't it? Don't worry, we're partners. What's mine is yours." I believed him. I was coding 18 hours a day, fueled by coffee and the belief that we were building a future together. I was so deep in the architecture of the software that I didn't notice how he was positioning himself to the outside world. He started taking meetings without me. He claimed the investors only wanted to talk big picture and that my technical explanations bored them. The betrayal began in earnest about a year into our relationship. I had finally cracked the stability issue in the algorithm. Aletheia was ready. It was running simulations with a 94% success rate. I was ecstatic. I wanted to pop champagne. Mark, however, was strangely quiet. 2 days later, he broke up with me. It wasn't a tearful conversation, it was a business meeting. He sat me down at our kitchen table, the table I had bought, and told me that our paths were diverging. He said I was too obsessive, too emotionally unstable, and that my intensity was bad for his mental health. He said he needed space to focus on the company. The company? I asked, my voice trembling. Mark, that's my code. That's my algorithm. He looked at me with a coldness that still haunts my nightmares. Eva, you wrote some scripts. I built the business. I secured the funding. I created the brand. Besides, you signed the IP assignment agreement when we incorporated. Everything you created while living under this roof belongs to Sterling Technologies. I felt like the floor had dissolved.
If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe. Also, please comment, as your feedback helps to improve the stories coming.
I vaguely remembered signing a stack of papers he had thrust at me one night when I was delirious with exhaustion, telling me it was just tax forms and standard liability waivers. I moved out that weekend. I had no money for a lawyer, and even if I did, Mark had already secured millions in venture capital. He had an army of attorneys. I had a laptop and a broken heart. But the worst part wasn't Mark. It was my family. When I told my parents what happened, I expected outrage. I expected my father to storm over to Mark's office. I expected my mother to comfort me. Instead, they invited Mark to Sunday dinner.
I remember sitting in my parents' living room a week after the breakup, stunned as my mother adjusted a vase of flowers. "Eva, darling, you have to be reasonable," my mother said, not even looking at me. "Mark is going places. He's explained the situation to us. He says you were overwhelmed, but you couldn't handle the pressure of a startup. He's doing this for your own good. He's even offered to give you a small stipend once the company goes public, out of the goodness of his heart." "He stole my work, Mom," I said, tears streaming down my face. "He didn't write a single line of code. He doesn't even know how to open the terminal." My father sighed, lowering his newspaper. "Stop being so dramatic, Eva. This is why he left you. You get so hysterical. Mark is a visionary. He knows how to sell. You're a worker bee. There's no shame in that, but don't try to claim credit for the man's genius. We should be grateful he's still willing to associate with us after how you acted." That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet click of a lock sliding into place. My family had chosen their allegiance. They were enamored by the promise of wealth, the proximity to fame. Mark had promised them shares in the friends and family round. He had bought my father a vintage watch and my mother a designer handbag. He had bought my sister's silence with a promise of a job in the PR department. I was alone. For the next 6 months, I watched from the shadows. I got a job doing freelance IT work, just enough to pay rent on a studio apartment that smelled like damp drywall. I spent my free time monitoring Mark. He was everywhere. TechCrunch, Forbes, Wired. He was the golden boy of fintech. He rebranded Alethea to OmniV. Every interview was a dagger. He used my words. He used my metaphors. He described the challenges of coding the core kernel, challenges I had spent sleepless nights solving as if he had battled them himself. He was building a legend on my back. But I knew something he didn't. I knew Mark, and I knew he was lazy. About 3 months before the IPO, the initial public offering that would value the company at over $1 billion, I received a phone call. It was my mother. "Eva," she said, her voice tight, "Mark is coming over for dinner tonight. You need to come." "Why would I do that?" I asked, looking at the screensaver on my laptop. "Because he needs your help, and we need this IPO to go well," she snapped. "There's a glitch. He says it's minor, but his engineers can't figure it out because the code is so complex and unique. He says only you would know the architecture." I almost laughed. Of course, the legacy code. When I wrote Alethea, I used a very specific, somewhat archaic library for the data ingestion because it was faster, but it required manual maintenance every few thousand operational hours. Mark's new team of hired developers probably looked at my code like it was written in hieroglyphics. They wouldn't touch the core for fear of breaking it. He wants me to fix the product he stole from me so he can become a billionaire? I asked. He's willing to offer you $50,000, my mother said, and we really think you should take it. Don't be petty, Eva. This affects your sister's job. It affects our investment. If the IPO fails, we all lose. We all lose? I repeated. But I've already lost, haven't I? Just come to dinner, she demanded. I went, but I didn't go to help. I went to lay the trap. Dinner was a surreal nightmare. Mark sat at the head of the table, my father pouring him expensive wine. My sister Chloe was hanging on to his every word. When I walked in, the room went silent. Mark stood up, opening his arms as if to hug me. I stepped back. Let's just get to it, I said. Where's the laptop? Eva, relax, Mark smiled, sitting back down. Have some risotto. Your mother made it. I'm not hungry. You have a bug in the ingestion module. The latency is spiking, isn't it? You're losing milliseconds, and in HFT, that means you're losing millions. Mark's smile faltered. He waved a hand dismissively. It's a minor hiccup. My team is top tier, but they respect the eccentricity of your original draft. We just need you to smooth out the edges before the roadshow. My father chimed in. See, Eva, he respects your work. He's giving you a chance to be part of history. I looked at my father, then at Mark. Show me the terminal. Mark pulled a laptop from his bag. It was my old laptop. He hadn't even bothered to transfer the data to a new machine. He was just using the one he took when I moved out. He logged in and spun it around. I sat down and looked at the code. It was like seeing an old friend who'd been tortured. His developers had bolted on clumsy interfaces and flashy front-end graphics, but the heart, the engine, was still mine. And sure enough, the buffer was overflowing. I can fix it, I said quietly. Great, Mark said, taking a sip of wine. I knew you'd come around. 50 grand, Eva. Easy money. I started typing. My fingers flew across the keys. The familiar rhythm calms me. I fixed the buffer issue in 10 minutes. It was a simple memory leak. But I didn't stop there. It's going to take a while to recompile the kernel, I said, lying. I need to optimize the thread allocation so this doesn't happen again during the IPO. Do whatever you need to do, Mark said, turning back to my father to discuss the yacht he planned to buy. They ignored me. They were so arrogant, so sure of my submission that they didn't watch the screen. I opened a deep subdirectory in the system, a folder labeled system_logs that I knew no one ever checked. In there, I wrote a new script. I called it the vanity protocol. It was a simple logic bomb, but it was triggered by a specific set of conditions. I set the trigger to activate only when the system detected the specific API handshake of the NASDAQ exchange combined with a trading volume exceeding 10 million shares, conditions that would only be met on the morning of the IPO, the moment the stock went live. But the payload wasn't a virus. It wasn't a delete command. I didn't want to destroy the code. I wanted to reclaim it. I programmed the software to override the graphical user interface. Instead of displaying stock tickers, trading graphs, and the OmniV logo, the software would pull from a hidden text file I was currently creating. Into that text file, I pasted the chat logs from 3 years ago, where Mark admitted he couldn't code. I pasted the timestamps of my original commits from before I even met him. I pasted the emails where he gaslit me. And finally, I embedded a command to broadcast the source code itself, scrolling rapidly, with my comments, my distinct personal developer comments, highlighted in bright red. Done, I said, hitting the enter key. The trap was set. Mark spun the laptop back around. He ran a quick diagnostic. The latency was gone. The system was humming. Perfect, he said. He didn't even say thank you. He just closed the lid. I'll have my assistant wire the money. You're saving yourself a lot of embarrassment, Eva. Being bitter isn't a good look. Good luck with the IPO, Mark, I said. I really mean that. I left the house without saying goodbye to my parents. They were too busy toasting to Mark's future. The next 2 months were a blur of anticipation. I didn't touch the $50,000. It sat in my account like blood money. I watched the news. The hype for Sterling Technologies was insane. Analysts were predicting it would be the biggest tech IPO of the decade. Mark was on the cover of Time magazine. My family was posting photos on Facebook of their new outfits for the bell-ringing ceremony in New York. They hadn't invited me, obviously. The day of the IPO arrived. I didn't go to New York. I sat in a coffee shop down the street from my apartment, wearing a hoodie with a single tablet propped up on the table. I was streaming CNBC. The atmosphere on the screen was electric. Times Square was covered in OmniV branding. There was Mark, standing on the podium at the NASDAQ market site, looking like a king. My parents were behind him, grinning like idiots, waving at the cameras. My sister was there, holding a glass of champagne. They looked so proud. They looked so rich. The commentator was breathless. And here we are, moments away from the opening bell. Mark Sterling, the genius behind OmniV, is about to usher in a new era of financial technology. The anticipated opening price is $120 a share. Mark stepped up to the button.
He gave a speech. I couldn't hear it over the pounding of my heart. He talked about innovation, about hard work, about vision. He didn't mention me. He didn't mention the woman whose code was about to process billions of dollars. He placed his hand on the ceremonial button. The crowd counted down. 10, 9, 8. I took a sip of my coffee. 3, 2, 1. Mark pressed the button. The bell rang, confetti cannons blasted into the air, the trading floor erupted in cheers. Behind Mark, the massive, building-sized digital screen that curved around the NASDAQ studio was supposed to display the ticker symbol STR and the live stock price. For a split second, it did, and then the vanity protocol executed. The screen flickered violently. The sleek blue and silver logo of OmniV shattered into digital static. The crowd noise wavered as people looked up, confused. Mark turned around, expecting to see his wealth climbing. Instead, the screen turned a stark, terminal black. Then, text began to scroll. Massive, white, monospace text, 50 feet high. It started with a header, Project Alethea, authored by Eva Mitchell. A gasp rippled through the crowd. I saw Mark freeze. His face went pale. Then came the logs. Mark Sterling, 2021. Babe, I don't know how to run the compiler. You have to do it for me. I'm just the face, remember? Mark Sterling, 2022. If you leave, I take everything. No one will believe a quiet girl wrote this. They believe what they see, and they see me. The text scrolled faster. The source code began to cascade down the screen like a waterfall. And there, highlighted in crimson red for the whole world to see, were my developer comments. Eva Mitchell, core logic block. Do not touch. If you are reading this, Mark Sterling stole this code. Property of Eva Mitchell. Stolen August 14th, 2022. The camera cut to Mark. He was frantically gesturing to the technicians. He was screaming, but his microphone had been cut. Or maybe he was just shouting into the void. My parents looked like statues. My mother's hand was over her mouth. My father looked like he was having a stroke. The anchor on CNBC was stammering. We seem to be having a technical difficulty. Or is this a hack? We are seeing... Are you reading this? It appears to be a manifesto of some sort embedded in the software. It wasn't just the big screen. The protocol was embedded in the trading software itself. Every trader on the floor who had loaded up the OmniV terminal saw their screens locked out. The buy and sell buttons were replaced with a single dialog box. Unauthorized use of intellectual property. System lockdown initiated. The stock, which had opened at $120, didn't even get a chance to trade. The SEC officials were already moving onto the podium. I saw men in suits, serious men, not the party crowd, walking towards Mark. Mark tried to run. I swear to God, he tried to push through the crowd. But there was nowhere to go. The cameras followed him, the world watched as the golden boy was cornered by federal regulators on live television, backed by a 50-foot screen displaying his own admissions of fraud. I closed the stream on my tablet, I left a $20 tip for a $3 coffee, and walked out into the sunlight. The aftermath was a slow, delicious burn. It has been 6 months since that day, and the fire is still raging. The IPO was canceled within the hour. The Nasdaq halted trading on Sterling Technologies indefinitely. Because the evidence was broadcast live to millions of people, there was no spinning it. There was no PR crisis management that could fix this. The FBI raided the Sterling Technologies offices that afternoon. They seized everything. The forensic analysis of the computers confirmed everything my vanity protocol had displayed. They found the original timestamps. They found the lack of any contributions from Mark. Mark was arrested 3 days later. He was charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and massive intellectual property theft. It turns out lying to investors about who owns your technology is a federal crime. Because he had signed documents attesting that he owned the IP, he had committed perjury on a massive scale. He is currently awaiting trial, and his lawyers are trying to plead him down to 10 years. He won't get off lightly. The investors he defrauded are powerful people, and they want blood. As for my family, that was the part I thought would hurt, but surprisingly, it didn't. My father called me the night of the disaster. I let it go to voicemail. He left 14 messages. At first, he was angry. He screamed that I had humiliated the family, that I had ruined our chance. By the 5th message, he was bargaining. Eva, maybe we can say it was a misunderstanding? Maybe you can tell the press you and Mark were partners? By the 14th message, he was crying. The fallout had been nuclear. Since my father had invested heavily in the friends and family round, leveraging their house to do so, they were wiped out. The stock was worthless. The loans were called in. Mark had also convinced my father to solicit investments from his friends and clients. Now, those people were suing my father for negligence and fraud. His real estate license is under review. They are likely going to lose the house. My sister lost her job before she even started. Her fiancé left her, terrified of being associated with the scandal. 2 weeks ago, I finally agreed to meet my mother. She came to my new apartment. It's a nice place, a very nice place. You see, once the dust settled, the true value of Aletheia became apparent. Several legitimate hedge funds approached me. They didn't care about the drama, they cared about the code. I licensed the algorithm, strictly the algorithm, retaining full ownership, to a firm in Chicago for a signing bonus of $4 million and ongoing royalties. My mother sat on my velvet sofa, looking 10 years older. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes. "Eva," she said, her voice trembling, "we're going to lose the house. Your father, he's broken. We need help." I looked at her, sipping my tea. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Is that all you have to say?" she cried out. "We are your family. How could you do this to us? You knew what would happen when you planted that virus." "It wasn't a virus," I corrected her calmly. "It was the truth. You named me after it, remember? You just forgot to value it." "We made a mistake," she sobbed. "We were blinded by him, but you destroyed him. You destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything," I said, standing up to signal the end of the meeting. "Mark built a house of cards. You all decided to move in. All I did was open a window." "You have millions now," she pleaded. "Please, just enough to save the house." I thought about the Thanksgiving dinner. I thought about the $50,000 they tried to buy me off with. I thought about the way they looked at me when they thought I was nothing. "I can't help you," I said. "My money is tied up in new ventures. Besides, I think it's important for you to learn from this experience. Isn't that what you told me when Mark dumped me? That it was a learning opportunity?" She left in tears. I haven't spoken to them since. I did, however, visit Mark one last time. He was out on bail, wearing an ankle monitor, living in a small rented room because his assets were frozen. I didn't go inside. I just saw him from his driveway. He looked disheveled, unshaven, a shadow of the man who rang that bell. He saw me in my car. He stopped.
For a moment, he looked like he wanted to scream, to run at me. But then his shoulders slumped. He knew. He knew that I was the one who was truly the genius. He knew that without me, he was nothing. I drove away. I'm now running my own firm, Mitchell Analytics. We hire the quiet ones, the ones who sit in the back, the ones who do the work. And every line of code we write is signed, authenticated, and owned by the people who created it. They said I should be grateful. They were right. I am grateful. I'm grateful I learned exactly who they were before I wasted another second of my life trying to please them. And I'm grateful that when the world looked at that screen, they didn't just see a scandal, they saw my name. And this time, it's staying there. Revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reclamation. Like the video if you believe in karma and justice, and subscribe for stories where the overlooked take everything back.